Sexual Freedom Alliance. I'm going to talk to you about the title of today's educational event and why we chose it, what it has to do with you, what it has to do with Woodhull. Sexual outlaws, the prohibition of pleasure. It was a very deliberate choice of panel because we think that with the way society is right now, we are running parallel to the way things were when prohibition was enacted. It didn't stop anybody from drinking. Well, maybe it stopped somebody, but what it did was it drove drinking underground. And it led to, other than the Civil War, the most violent time in our country. And we still have the leftovers from Prohibition in organized crime in this country. The sex panic, I call it the sex panic, the apparent determination to criminalize, marginalize, or eliminate as much sex and sexuality as possible is very much like Prohibition. People didn't stop drinking. People are not going to stop having sex. And the idea that someone can decide what is and isn't acceptable sex, I have a real problem with that. It's a personal problem, but I have a real problem with that. One of the ways that we look at what's happening at Woodhull is in a way that will allow us to engage broad communities, to expand the way we look at issues and look for opportunities to work with allies and other people for whom your issue may be similar. We were talking earlier today about the issue of same-sex marriage. It's an issue that's all over the news, and it is framed specifically in LGBT terms, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender. This morning, I got a release from the White House, and it says, Obama said this: "No country should deny people their rights to freedom of speech and freedom of religion, but also no country should deny people their rights because of who they love." Now, if he had just stopped there, he would have had the human rights frame, but he went on. He said, "Which is why we must stand up for the rights of gays and lesbians everywhere." Now, all of a sudden, those who are not gays and lesbians are on the outside of the rights argument, and this is now about gay and lesbian relationships. It isn't. It's about all of us, and it's about all of our relationships, and it's about our fundamental human right to have these relationships, to have a family of choice, to express ourselves sexually in a way that pleases us and fulfills us, and then makes us healthier people. So everybody looks at things that happen and they say, well, this is an LGBT issue, or this is about labor law, or this is about, zoning. This is just about zoning. This isn't about sex. Or they look at domestic violence and they say, well, this is just about partner abuse. You all have, or you should have, a handout. It says case study, domestic violence. We're going to go back through it and we're going to talk about some human rights very quickly. But one of the goals of Woodhull, one of the dreams of Woodhull, is that when something happens, people will look and say, that's a human rights issue, and it is an LGBT issue or a reproductive justice issue. But first, it's a violation of human rights. So the human rights, some of them that were violated in this particular situation, I can start a list. Personal autonomy. That was violated by her abuser. How about, I know some of these answers, so feel free to call in. Right to work, freedom from violence and torture, equal protection.
The right to due diligence. That is the responsibility of the state to investigate her claims. Now, I think we can also acknowledge that there is a fundamental gap between what we think of as civil rights and human rights. That civil rights will stop here, but we have human rights standards that are here. So we have a gap that needs to be closed. Because in this scenario, police all across the country, they will get away with this kind of activity.
They do get away with this.
They
kind
do.
of
This situation
activity.
is something that's relatively common. But this is, I mean, it is full of fundamental violations of human rights. But there's impunity here because of that gap between civil rights and human rights.
There's a wonderful book called Eyes Off the Prize, which is about how the movement for Black liberation gave away the prize when they went from the human rights framework to the civil rights framework. Civil rights are granted. Human rights are ours by virtue of our birth. They are inalienable, and that is what we're looking at today and in the work of Woodhull.